I don't know what you can do in 72 minutes. Not much. That's all you have once it starts, 72 minutes, unless you're some of the people that caught up in the early phases of it. And we're talking about, bombs of, 500 kilotons. The bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima was 15 kilotons. We're talking about thousands of 500 kiloton bombs striking targets in Europe and the United States. Over 100 million degrees instantly, hotter than the sun, will devastate an area of 10-mile radius. Gone, vaporized. All that will be sucked up into the atmosphere thousands of times. The sky will darken with radioactive dust, leading to a global ice age that will last for a decade or more. The billions of people who will die because of this nuclear conflagration will be covered with a field of ice. When it does eventually thaw out, then we'll have billions of rotting corpses that will bring pestilence to any of the survivors, but there won't be survivors because you can't grow food, you can't drink the water, you can't breathe the air. And so we all die because Keir Starmer wants to make a point, because Tony Blinken wants to make a point, because Jake Sullivan wants to make a point. Well, Tony Blinken and Jake Sullivan were told by the American people, we don't want that point made. Keir Starmer hasn't even brought it to the British people. He's making a decision on their behalf without even consulting them. I can guarantee you that if Keir Starmer took it to a vote for the people of England, that we're going to support an attack against the Russian soil, knowing that it will lead to thermonuclear war and you will all die, that the British people say, no, we don't vote for that. We don't support that. Nobody would support that. And yet these politicians are heading down that direction, making it because they think Russia is bluffing. They think Russia's bluffing. I mean, for the sake of humanity, I guess we have to hope that Russia's bluffing at this point in time. But I don't think Russia is bluffing. And I'm very nervous about what's to come. The only way out of this right now is either for Russia to fold like a house of cards, which they're not going to do, or for Russia to take out Zelensky, to terminate any idea of a victory plan and viability, and then call NATO's bluff. Let's turn it around, because I can guarantee you this: Keir Starmer will have to put on a pair of Depends if Russia calls NATO's bluff, because he will be peeing his pants in fear. Because NATO's not ready to go to war with Russia. They're not ready for this. Russia needs to take out Kiev, take out Zelensky, and then tell NATO, what are you going to do about it? And the answer is nothing. NATO will do nothing because they can't. NATO only acts on weakness, the perception of weakness. And right now, Russia is perceived by NATO as being weak because Putin hasn't acted immediately, as he said. Remember, Putin said the decisions have already been made. The orders have already been given. Well, I don't know. I saw 6 ATACMS missiles strike Russia this morning. Has a decision been made? Have the orders been given? Then why aren't they being implemented? Russia's inaction fuels NATO aggressiveness, NATO overconfidence. And if Russia doesn't respond soon, you're going to see the next step, which will be scalp missiles, storm shadow missiles. Remember, they only have a 2-month time frame to effect this change, they being NATO. So there's going to be acceleration. The United States will now provide longer range missiles. More aircraft will come in, extended air defense. And next thing you know, Ukraine is part of NATO. And if Russia doesn't do anything, that's the reality. That's the outcome that's going to happen.
I wonder if the Biden administration is communicating with Trump and his team on this matter.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think you see fury inside the Trump administration because they have a mandate for change, and the Biden administration is totally disregarding this mandate. They're acting as if the American people didn't speak clearly about what they want. I mean, this is dangerous for democracy. It's dangerous for the world. It's an insult to democracy. Joe Biden saying, "I don't care what the people said." The people clearly have said they don't want to continue your policy with Ukraine. And yet Joe Biden is now forcing a war to tie up Donald Trump's hands so that when Donald Trump becomes president on January 20th, he will be presented with a fait accompli, that he can't implement the changes. Remember, NATO's doing this because NATO understands, left to his own volition, Trump is going to end NATO. NATO is a corrupt edifice. Trump views it as such. He views it as an organization that has no justification. But if suddenly you make NATO relevant by imposing NATO on Ukraine to confront Russia, and now Trump has to deal with this reality, it changes everything. It gives NATO, a new lease on life. And so that's what's happening here. This is the equivalent of me going into Las Vegas, mortgaging my house, taking my children's college fund, everything, and just going in and putting it all on red and praying that the roulette ball comes up red, not once, but 5 times in a row, because that's what I need to win. Odds are it isn't going to happen, but that's the kind of gambling mentality that's taking place with the Trump administration right now.
Here is what Waltz, the next national security advisor to Donald Trump, said on Fox News. Scott.
2 months left in office. Joe Biden has done something that's been called on to do since this war started. Allow Ukraine to strike Russia with everything that we give them, the ATACMS, which are long-range missiles. Hit Russia where they're trying to hit them from. Your reaction to that, and were you briefed ahead of time?
I was not, Brian, and it's another step up the escalation ladder, and nobody knows where this is going. North Korea is unleashing ballistic missiles, artillery, now tens of thousands of soldiers. The administration responds by lifting this restriction. North Korea sends more soldiers. South Korea is now saying it may get engaged. China is buying oil from Iran for pennies of the dollar. Iran is using that to send missiles and drones to Russia that is then hitting Ukrainian critical infrastructure. So this is a development, but it's a tactical one. President Trump is talking grand strategy here. How do we get both sides to the table to end this war? What's the framework for a deal? And who's sitting at that table? Those are the things that I and President Trump, of course, will be working with. Again, this is an all-star team, Brian, that President Trump is assembling.
Yeah. Do you find it that right now with this decision that would bring some sort of difficulties to the relationship, there is no relationship, to the talks between the United States and Russia in the Trump administration?
I've always said that Donald Trump's idea of being able to pick up the phone and call Vladimir Putin and bring this war to an end in 24 hours is an absurdity. It's impossible, because Vladimir Putin is not the kind of leader that would respond to that unless Russia is bluffing. In that case, Vladimir Putin may be looking for a way out. It's a hell of a gamble, though, because I don't think Russia's bluffing. I think the gentleman that you spoke to, the future national security advisor, Mr. Waltz, I believe his name is.
Yeah, Michael Waltz.
Yeah, I think he's unrealistic in the extreme. First of all, everything he said, the way he couched this problem is just crap. I don't want to get you demonetized for using bad words, so it's garbage. There's no evidence that North Korean troops are deployed into Russia. In order for that to happen, you would have to believe that Russia, which is a very legalistic nation, would allow North Korea to send troops to Russia before the treaty that would empower that had been ratified and made into law. That's not how it works. But we've made this up. This is part of the justification. Remember, the reason why we're authorizing the ATACMS missile to strike Kursk is that we've created a script, a narrative that says North Korean troops are coming into Kursk. This is a game changer that we have to empower the Ukrainians to respond to. There's no evidence whatsoever that North Korean troops are in Kursk, and I don't believe they are, because what's the legal framework? Russia just doesn't allow foreign troops onto its soil. There has to be a legal framework. That legal framework didn't exist at the time when we said North Korean troops were coming in. So, no, we made this up, and we're making it up because we also want South Korea to start shipping munitions and weapons to Ukraine. South Korea was hesitant to do that, but now with this so-called North Korean escalation, South Korea is now engaged. This is about, once again, the United States lying to the world, lying to the American people about a non-existent threat in order to justify military action. It's the same model of lies and deceit that led us to a war in Iraq. The only difference was that the Iraqis didn't have nuclear weapons, and we couldn't pay a price because we were going to win that fight. Here, the Russians do have nuclear weapons, and all this escalation, there's no guarantee that we're going to prevail. It could just lead to nuclear disaster. This is a very, very dangerous situation. I would also say that the National Security Advisor, future National Security Advisor's belief that he's going to have a serious role in shaping Donald Trump's worldview is a little misplaced. Donald Trump is a top-down leader. Just ask John Bolton, ask H.R. McMaster's, ask Michael Flynn what it was like to be the National Security Advisor for Donald Trump. Donald Trump does what Donald Trump wants to do when Donald Trump wants to do it. And the others aren't going to advise him. The person that has perhaps the most influence over him will be Tulsi Gabbard, who won't allow this kind of garbage to be fed to him, this falsified intelligence. She will dig down and say, no, Mr. President, there's no evidence of this. This is the truth. This is what's happening, et cetera. And then the president will turn to the National Security Advisor and say, I want a meeting with Putin, and your job is to make that happen. If the National Security Advisor says, Mr. President, I advise against that, he won't be National Security Advisor for too long. You don't advise the president against the president. You support the president's decision. That's one of the things that that Trump learned from the first time around. They let too many people oppose him. We could have had a denuclearized North Korea. That's the irony here. That had Donald Trump succeeded in his outreach to North Korea, we wouldn't be talking about North Korean troops potentially being in Russia. We wouldn't be talking about North Korean ballistic missiles. It would be a completely different dialogue because we would have normalized relations with North Korea and we moved down the path of stability. That's what Donald Trump wanted to do. He was opposed by his Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, National Security Advisor, Director of National Intelligence, and everybody on his staff. They opposed it. He learned from that lesson. He won't brook opposition. He's been mandated to carry out a revolution, and he's going to carry out that revolution as he sees fit. And so I think these people that think Marco Rubio is going to have an impact, he won't. You think Waltz is going to have impact, he won't. The one who will have the most impact is Tulsi Gabbard because as Director of National Intelligence, she gets to brief him on the worldview every morning. And that conversation will shape Donald Trump's worldview. And then he will give direction to others to implement. But they aren't going to tell him what to do. He's going to tell them what to do.
It's not just about the problems that the Biden administration is trying to make for Donald Trump in terms of the conflict in Ukraine. Here is what Ursula von der Leyen said about the future of the conflict, Scott.
Days ago, Russia tried to wipe Ukraine off the map. And for 1,000 days, Russia has failed because of Ukraine's resistance and the sacrifice of your heroes. Today is a day of mourning, but also a day of promise. We promise to keep standing by your side for as long as it takes. You can rest assured that European and Western support will continue to flow. The winter ahead may be scary, but it is in stormy days that true friends show up. And Europe is your true friend. Your freedom is our freedom, and our union is your home. Long live Europe and Slava Ukraine.
Who are we? Is the United States Donald Trump is part of we that she's talking about?
No, and she knows that Donald Trump and the United States under Donald Trump is not part of we. Our union, that's the European Union. We, Europe. Again, the easiest way to finish this is to finish Ukraine. And the easiest way to finish Ukraine is to destroy Bankova Street, destroy the Ukrainian government, destroy Zelensky's ability to govern. That can happen right now, and it should happen right now. It brings all of this to an end. Once you remove Zelensky and his government from the equation, it's over. It's unsustainable. The West, there's nothing to hold on to. The Ukraine isn't going to recreate a government overnight, isn't going to create structures capable of governing. It's not a democracy. It's a dictatorship, and the dictatorship is the people around Zelensky. You eliminate those people, Ukraine sinks into chaos, anarchy, and there's nothing for the West to hold on to. And I would love nothing more than to wipe that silly, stupid smirk off of her face by seeing Russian decisive actions at this point in time. It's not that I want harm brought to the Ukrainian people, but I think at this juncture, Zelensky is threatening the entire world with nuclear annihilation, including Ursula von der Leyen. I mean, she's not smart enough to understand this, but her policies will lead to a decisive confrontation with Russia, which will eventually manifest itself in nuclear war, and then we all die. So the best thing, the only thing that can save us right now is decisive Russian action against Ukraine. It's been promised. If the Russians deliver, we might have a chance to live through Christmas. But if the Russians fold, if they're bluffing, NATO is going to be calling their bluff. You saw her; she's ready to move forward aggressively, empowering Europe to do things with NATO to go in and engage. But her words are empty if Russia stands up, because NATO cannot confront a determined Russia. NATO can seek to further intimidate a cowed Russia, a Russia that's been bluffing. And that's what they believe. They believe that Russia is bluffing. They believe that Russia is weak, that Putin doesn't have the support, that Putin won't, make these hard decisions because he's not empowered to. If they're right, then it's over for Russia, because, basically the Ukrainian conflict will end in a strategic Russian defeat. And that will, damage Putin at home. It could lead to the Maidan type events in Moscow that have him removed from power. This is a very, very critical time for Russia. And, Vladimir Putin has outlined the consequences of an American attack on Russia. If he fails to deliver on this, then he's bluffing, and NATO will call that bluff. And suddenly the Zelensky victory plan that everybody was making fun of becomes real.
Yeah. We had G20 summit here in Brazil. They were in the final points that they made in the final declarations. One of the points was about Ukraine. They were talking about Ukraine and the Middle East, and also nuclear war, that both of these conflicts can lead to a nuclear war. How did you find G20 summit, Scott? What is the importance of this summit? Is the countries who are part of this summit considering their role to be more important, more crucial, or they're just going there like UN? At the UN, they just go there, just do some talks and get back to their home?
Well, if you remember back in 2022, February 4th, I believe, Vladimir Putin flew to Beijing to meet with Xi Jinping on the eve of the Beijing Winter Olympics. And the two leaders released a 5,000 plus word joint statement that it was in effect a declaration of war against the rules-based international order, American hegemony. They said that the alternative is a law-based international order that is multipolar in nature, consensus-driven. They articulated three potential venues for this. The first was BRICS. The second was the G20. And the third was the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And at that time, it was said all three of these will be pursued. BRICS, I think, won out. We saw a great deal of effort go into Kazan last month to make BRICS a viable state. And indeed, we see evidence of this at the COPD conference in Azerbaijan. BRICS nations, even though they haven't been recognized by the United Nations as one of the, as a formal group, they were working independently in a unofficial manner, coordinating behind the scenes to coordinate policies. That's the thing. BRICS nations now talk to one another. The G20, I think it's interesting that we had the G20 in November and we had BRICS in October, and we get to juxtapose, and compare, the effectiveness of the G20. And I think what we're seeing with the G20 is that there is a fundamental split between the Western powers, the G7, who have insinuated themselves into the G20. Remember, the G20 is a creation of the G7. They said, oh, we're going to create a bigger club that we control, and we're going to invite people in that we control. But when you take away the G7 from the G20, you get BRICS, basically. And I think what we're seeing is the flaws of the G20, because in order to succeed, the G20 has to be a consensus-driven multilateral organization. But there can be no consensus between the West and the BRICS countries. They are fundamentally at odds with one another. So the G20 stands as an example of why you need a BRICS. It's an empowerment tool for BRICS. And I think that's the important thing. BRICS will never succeed because at the end of the day, as long as there's this existential struggle between the rules-based international order and those who oppose it in the global South, you're going to see this kind of conflict.
And right now in Lebanon, in southern part of Lebanon, we've learned that Israelis are using their elites, their elite forces in the southern part of Lebanon. Do you think their strategy is changing in the southern part of Lebanon, or they're just pursuing the same kind of strategy and just expecting a new result coming out of this?
First of all, I wouldn't read too much into the 7th Armored Brigade being deployed. Elite, from an Israeli perspective, perhaps. Their moment of glory came during the Yom Kippur War, where they fought valiantly to hold back a Syrian attack. Since then, what have they done? How elite can you be when you're in an armored unit that's used against civilians, that's used against lightly armed infantry? There's nothing elite about the 7th Armored Brigade. It's an armored brigade. They have a certain elan, but they have never fought a meaningful opponent except in 2006 when they fought Hezbollah and lost. And they're going to lose now. The fact they're sending in, when do you send in your elites? At the culminating moment of the battle. I mean, think about it. The Battle of Waterloo, Napoleon, the Republican Guard, the elite bearskin wearing guardsmen of the old guard were held until the end. And then he sent in the old guard to attack Wellington squares to break the British. But the squares held. The old guard was defeated. They retreated. Has Hezbollah been broken? Every Israeli effort to go into Lebanon has been repulsed by a very strong Hezbollah defense, which has inflicted very heavy losses on the Israelis. Now they've sent in the 7th Armored Brigade. Why? Because the squares broke, Hezbollah's running back in retreat, or it's their last gasp effort. They have no other resources. Now they have to act because they're running out of time. So they're sending in the brigade, and it will suffer the same fate as all the brigades that came before it. Burnt out Merkava tanks, dead Israeli soldiers, the inability to meaningfully penetrate Hezbollah defenses. That's what I believe this is. This is a recognition that the battle has reached its culminating point. Unless Israel does something that changes the outcome, Blucher's Prussians are appearing on the horizon, and they're coming down. And if you don't break Wellington, the combination of Wellington and the Prussians is going to wipe you off the battlefield. That's what Israel is facing right now. They need to break Hezbollah. This is an act of desperation. That's how I interpret this.
In your opinion, the strategy of Donald Trump in Israel would be supporting Netanyahu, or just letting the opposition or those people who are not agreeing on to get into the power, to have the opportunity to be part of the government? Because so far with Netanyahu in power, there is no possibility of any sort of change. We had the war in Gaza. They didn't finish. They couldn't defeat Hezbollah, the Hamas. And right now they're in the southern part of Lebanon. Maybe they're thinking of when Donald Trump comes to power, they're going to attack Iran. Just being in the southern part of Lebanon and having a new front with Iran. Do you find it that way? Because it seems to me that in the mind of Netanyahu, it can be this strategy.
I think Netanyahu, what you're implying is that he has a 2-month strategy. Netanyahu has a day-by-day strategy of staying in power, living. He's under attack across the board inside Israel. There's a new, Seymour Hersh has published a Substack article, and I encourage everybody to subscribe and read it, that describes the new legal trouble that Benjamin Netanyahu's in. He gave a briefing a couple weeks ago now. where he made the case that the hostages didn't come home because Hamas never planned on releasing the hostages, that he's not to blame, that he wanted this the whole time, but it was Hamas that undermined and released. And to support that, he published an extract of a document that the Israeli Defense Force seized in Gaza early on. This is a strategic document that outlines the strategic vision of Sinwar, what he hoped to accomplish with October 7th, etc. And his strategic vision of the hostages. Early on in this document, which, by the way, is the most sensitive secret document in the Israeli archive. It's so secret that they have a special reading room in the Israeli headquarters of the military intelligence, the Amman, that you have to have permission to go there, which means you have to have a need to know. You're not allowed to take notes. You're not allowed to make copies. You can read the document, and that's it. Netanyahu sent somebody in there and abused his power to gain access to the document, to copy the document, and then to bring that out. And then he used this document to brief the Israeli people. He used a page from it that said that Sinwar was considering going to Egypt with the hostages and then going on to Iran. He said this proves that Hamas never, ever intended to do this. I was justified. But that's not the case. The next 2 pages, which Netanyahu, it's a 12-page document, the next 2 pages clearly state that while this was a suggestion to Sinwar, Sinwar rejected this suggestion. And Sinwar said, no, we're staying in Gaza, we'll have the hostages, and we're looking for a deal to turn the hostages into a deal for a ceasefire. The hostages are a tool, part of our strategy. We want a ceasefire. We're willing to negotiate the return of the hostages for this, which proves that it's Netanyahu, not Hamas, that sabotaged the entire hostage debacle. That's this tragedy of these people being held now for over 400 days, I believe it is. It's Benjamin Netanyahu's fault. The judge, he has been charged with 2 crimes. One crime is illegally releasing this information, misuse of classified material, and 2, lying to the Israeli people, deceiving them by using classified information incorrectly. The judge who oversees this had to seal the file because of the political sensitivity. This is explosive stuff. Netanyahu's in a lot of trouble. And so every day is a struggle for survival for him. Every day things continue to happen to chip away at the foundation of his ability to govern. Judges are saying it's time that we bring him up on charges for corruption that he's been charged with. They're now talking about opening up an October 7th investigation that Benjamin Netanyahu will not survive politically. So the notion that the Trump administration is going to somehow ride in and save Benjamin Netanyahu is ignorant as the day is long. Netanyahu's problems come from within Israel, and there's nothing Trump can do to change that, to solve that. Trump wants an end to this conflict. Trump wants this conflict to be over. But Trump can't save Benjamin Netanyahu the same way that Trump can't save Israel. The damage that's been done to Israel is fatal. Their economy is in tatters. They're not going to recover. $67 billion hit last year, over $100 billion hit coming up this year. Nobody's investing, no trades coming in. Thousands have fled their homes. Thousands more will flee their home. Israel can't win this war. And internally, the situation inside Israel politically is chaotic at best. It's not stable. It's unstable. There was talk a little while ago of a military coup against Israel. I will tell you this. If I were the CIA briefing the President of the United States on Iran's future, and I took the Israeli scenario I just painted and replaced everywhere I said Israel, I said Iran. Everywhere I said Netanyahu, I said Khamenei. And I briefed this. Mr. President, in Iran, we have a collapsed economy. $67 billion hit last year, $100 billion hit with no chance of recovery. No investments are going to be made. Political chaos. The Iranians are losing everywhere they're fighting. We go, well, this is the end of Iran. Any rational player, when listening to that, would say, well, Iran is in a state of freefall, collapse. It's over. The regime can't recover. And yet, when we say Israel, everybody ignores it. The world pretends to believe that Israel is stable, that Netanyahu is stable, that the Israeli military is stable. They ignore the fact that they have 12 to 24% desertion rate, that people are committing suicide, that they can't win. There's the morale has collapsed in the units that have to go out and fight over the same terrain that they fought over 3 times previously in Gaza, knowing that they're going to continue to die. the people recognize going into southern Lebanon as a death wish. Every time they engage Hezbollah, Hezbollah punches back, inflicts more casualties. They haven't advanced 20 kilometers in. They haven't occupied and controlled a village. They're being slaughtered. This is the reality. Israel is a state in collapse. And it's not Scott Ritter that says this. This is Israeli generals that say this. Israeli politicians, former prime ministers say this. You had an Israeli general go on TV a while back that say that if this doesn't change, he doesn't believe it's going to change, Israel will cease to exist in a year to 5 years. Israel will cease to exist in a year to 5 years. And there's nothing Trump can do to change that. Trump can have all the Zionists in the world around him, and he does. But they can't change this outcome. Just like I could have all the doctors in the world surrounding me, but if I've ingested poison, I'm going to die. They can all wish that I wouldn't die. They can make my death less painful, but I'm going to die. Israel has ingested the poison of its own actions. The world has rejected Israel because of its genocidal behavior. Israel's rejecting itself near civil war conditions. The Israeli president has been warning of a civil war for some time now. Israel can't recover from this. Israel is fatally injured, and there's not a damn thing Donald Trump can do to save Israel. The best he can hope to do is mitigate the damage done by the impending collapse of Israel. And Netanyahu, for Donald Trump, is disposable. And I don't know if Netanyahu will be here when Donald Trump becomes president. We can't get, because everything is moving so fast. In many ways, Donald Trump, I think, would prefer not to have Benjamin Netanyahu, because he knows that Netanyahu he won't negotiate. Trump has complained that there is a solution to be found, but it requires negotiation. And there's one party that refuses to negotiate, and that's Israel. So when you talk about the need for change, the need for bringing it into the conflict, the party that won't go along with that is Israel. And so as much as Donald Trump supports Israel, he understands that Israel's the problem, not the solution. And that while he can surround himself with Zionists who sing praise to greater Israel, Michael Huckabee can pray for the rapture all he wants. At least Stefanik can go into the United Nations and celebrate the Sabbath all she wants in public and promote all this. It's meaningless, because that's just words. You have to fundamentally change Israeli reality. And right now, the Israeli reality is they have consumed a bunch of poison that they themselves made, and they're going to die. And there's nothing Donald Trump can do to save them.
Here is in the Jerusalem Post, they're talking about the southern Lebanon is actually northern Israel. Do you think the mindset of the Netanyahu and his administration is the same? And how is that a viable choice for Israel right now? And how capable are they to achieve that? Because it's dangerous. It's unbelievable the way they're talking about. It's not just about the West Bank, the northern part of Gaza. Right now, they're talking about the southern part of Lebanon. It's unbelievable.
If they're not careful, a headline we might be reading in the near future is that northern Israel is southern Lebanon. That's more likely to happen than Israel defeating Hezbollah and taking over southern Lebanon. Hezbollah is not going to be defeated. But this is the mindset of the pro-Netanyahu people, the pro-Ben Gvir people. I don't know that author. I'd have to Google him up. But I can pretty much tell you that he's not labor. If he's not Likud, then he's part of a far right wing. But Likud, this is the kind of greater Israel policy formulation that Likud has been promoting, that Netanyahu has been promoting. So this isn't written by an academic, I'm guessing, by a rational actor who's looking at it doing sound analysis. This is an activist, a pro-Zionist activist who's pushing for this outcome because he believes in greater Israel. I don't believe this is a guy sitting there going, after careful consideration of all things going on, I believe that the reality is that southern Lebanon is de facto part of northern Israel. I don't know. I could be wrong. Like I said, I don't know who this guy is. I'm just speculating based upon the absurdity of the headline. But the first thing that has to happen is you have to defeat Hezbollah. Good luck, Israel. You haven't done it so far, and I don't think the 7th Armored Brigade is going to succeed either.
Let's assume that Donald Trump goes to a level of helping Israel, that they can defeat Hezbollah? Do you think that Iran would stay aside, that doesn't do anything about it, or Iran would get involved in that?
A lot depends on Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump ran on a platform that said he's avoiding war. So I don't think that he's inclined to go to war against Iran. Plus, understand this: the world is different today than it was in the first Trump administration. What has happened since Donald Trump stepped down from office? China has brokered a rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia. One of the key goals of the Trump administration, indeed one of the underpinning philosophies behind the Abraham Accord, was that Saudi Arabia would normalize relations with Israel and create a Sunni shield against the Shia crescent to hold back the axis of resistance. Well, we just had MBS meet with Russia and commit to the fact that there will be no normalization of relations with Israel until there's a Palestinian state and the capital of the Palestinian state is in Jerusalem. That's a big change from what the position Saudi Arabia had before. And Donald Trump, he can go back to Saudi Arabia and do the dance of swords that he did before, and all that nonsense isn't going to change Saudi mindset. The Saudis now are working joint military training with Iran. They're having that level of dialogue. It's not moving towards a Saudi-Iranian confrontation, but rather furthering the rapprochement, because they both work in the BRICS format, which is a multilateral, consensus-driven, global view. So I don't know what Trump thinks he's going to accomplish. The idea of creating, how do you go to war against Iran if you don't have support amongst your Gulf Arab allies? If Qatar says you can't use Al Udeid Air Base to strike Iran, we won't allow it. If Bahrain says, I'm sorry, you can't use Mubarak is the headquarters of the Fifth Fleet to go after Iran. If everybody says no, how do you do it? And right now, nobody in the Gulf Arab world is looking for a confrontation with Iran, because that brings in a confrontation with Russia and China. And Trump's not looking for that kind of confrontation either. So all this notion that Trump's going to come in hard against Iran, I think, is absurd. Trump has alluded to the fact that he would consider lifting sanctions against Iran, that he doesn't view regime change as an essential element of American policy. It always has been. Since the revolution, our goal, the Iranian revolution, the Islamic revolutions, our goal has been to remove the theocracy from power. Trump is saying, no, that's not our goal anymore. So the notion that Trump is going to automatically align with aggressive Israeli policies to attack Iran, I think, isn't reflected by the facts. And again, even though Michael Waltz, I think that's his name, right? Michael Waltz, the National Security Advisor, even though he has articulated positions that suggest that that's the direction he would like to go, even though little Marco Rubio, as Secretary of State, has articulated this, they don't call the shots. The guy calling the shots is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, remember, is the man who reached out to North Korea for denuclearization, despite the fact that Mike Pompeo, as Secretary of State, and John Bolton, as National Security Advisor, were dead set against it, despite the fact that Dan Coats, as Director of National Intelligence, was dead set against it. His Secretary of Defense was dead set against it. But he did it anyways, because that's what Donald Trump wanted to do. Donald Trump believes that he can negotiate a new relationship with Iran that is mutually beneficial, that moves towards, economic prosperity for all, because that's his vision, global economic prosperity. Can he achieve this? I don't know. Odds are against him. But I do believe that Iran is willing to listen. That's one of the reasons why Iran hasn't attacked Israel. This long-awaited strategic strike hasn't happened, because Iran is sitting there saying, well, wait a minute, there's going to be a new sheriff in town on January 20th. We might want to listen to the sheriff before we have the gunfight at the OK Corral. So I think they're going to give Trump a chance to listen, to see what he has to offer, to avoid war. And that's what Trump wants, to avoid war. He doesn't want a war. And so all these people that are thinking that there's going to be this war once Trump comes in, you didn't listen to him when he ran for office. He condemns the Biden administration for in past administrations for getting us involved in these endless wars that just kill people. They don't solve anything. He's promoting an end to conflict. And I believe he's sincere. And so let's see what happens. I think Iran is willing to wait and see what happens too.
Hello guys, welcome back to my another brand new video. In this video, Scott Ritter has discussed about ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia, and he also discussed about
Marked a location.
Iran and Israel, and he also discussed about ongoing war which going between Iran and Israel. Scott Ritter is a narrator of and
Help! I need a grip.
thank you guys for watching my video. Where all the only my number 3 teammate is still alive. Other guys are dead. One of my teammates was offline. So guys, if you would like to watch war related videos, then you can subscribe my channel. In my channel, I daily upload war related videos, which are described by Scott Ritter, Douglas McGregor. Guys, I think this video will be enjoyable for you. That's why I am requesting you to subscribe my channel and watch each and every of my videos. Thank you guys who are already subscribed my channel and watch each and every of my videos. Today I have uploaded a long video, but in this mess we are going to let what's happened. Scott Ritter is a well-known person. He wrote some books and he is the narrator of war and current affairs. Scott Ritter was ex-army officer of US military. So guys, if you like my videos, then you can subscribe my channel. Hello, thank you guys. Now I am playing new gameplay. This name is BPM and I expect this match with you and now I am landing on the roof of
Help!
the guy has finished me, but my teammates are still alive. 2 teammates are still alive. Let's see what they can do. Basically, in this match I have very early. My teammates are finished. We are all finished in this match. Guys, if you like to watch more related video, and then you can, this is the best channel for you to subscribe. Thank you everyone who are still watching and watch until the end. Bye for now. I'll be back with another video next day. Bye bye. Tata. Thank you.